Hi, this is Lisa Rangel with Chameleon Resumes, the premier executive resume writing company, and thank you so much for joining me today. Today, we're going to talk about the one differentiator that I'm seeing that's getting executives hired. So, to rephrase that, when I see executives and senior leaders getting hired, I notice this one common theme, whether they're in, executive level IT, senior level marketing, whatever the profession or the industry is, that I'm noticing this one quality that seems to be present amongst the individuals that I'm seeing getting hired. Now, this is obviously not a scientific study. It's just from my vantage point and within, the clients and individuals that I know at the senior level. But I do notice a pattern. So I want to share what I'm observing with you to see how that resonates with you. So the one thing that I'm noticing as a common theme, as a common trait, common thread that executives and senior leaders who are getting hired are exhibiting is they have this ability and a track record to show it where they can make something out of nothing. And, maybe the more buzzwordy type of word is agile, but I think it's more than that because, agile, in my opinion, is being able to be fluid with what exists. And in some cases it covers what doesn't exist, but the ability to create a process when you have a completely new scenario that you haven't dealt with before, I think that in and of itself is a trait. And I feel like the individuals that are, looking for the plan, even if it's to build a new plan off of, or they're looking for a roadmap of some kind, or they're looking for, very concrete studies to indicate where, direction should be made. Not to say that we shouldn't rely on data or that type of thing, but so much of what we're going through around the globe hasn't been done before, hasn't existed before. And even if we've had, pandemics and, geopolitical conflicts, and even though we've had that before, having it in today's situation in today's times is different, right? The technology's never been as prolific with these geopolitical and medical and healthcare issues going on. Supply chain issues are different today than maybe supply chain issues that existed 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So there's layers of complexity to what may have happened before, right? We had a pandemic 80 years ago. We had a pandemic, and in some areas still very much in it, today, but 80 years ago, there wasn't the proliferation of technology alongside of, doing this pandemic living that we're doing. So it's different, right? And I hate to say the word that is so overused in the last couple of years, but unprecedented, but leaders that have the ability to embrace that chaos and in an ethical manner, capitalize on the opportunity that comes from that chaos in terms of managing people better, managing processes better, managing supply chains better, making sure that things are better for clients and vendors. So taking what would normally be the case, pre-pandemic, pre-supply chain issues, pre-geopolitical conflict that's causing havoc in so many different directions around the globe, being able to make something out of that situation that you either haven't dealt with before, or your company hasn't dealt with before, or the micro or macro economy that you're in hasn't dealt with before, and come out of it either failing fast or capitalizing on the new way to do things that hadn't been done before, to adjust for what's going on. I think that in and of itself is a skill set. And those types of thinkers, those types of individuals who are able to embrace the conflict, accept it, I should say, is probably more of an appropriate word, right? Because clearly none of us are happy with it. But just accept that it's happening. Okay, now what do we have to do? And those are the individuals that are getting promotions. They're getting hired quickly. They're getting the large advances or salary increases, the larger bonuses. that's just something I'm seeing, again, from my little microcosm of the world. By no means, again, is this a scientific study or, an appropriate, data collection type of exercise. But, I saw this demonstration of a skill set being an asset, since really March, April 2020, and it's carrying through to today in a different way. It's manifesting in different ways now. The new, situation we haven't dealt with before is everyone wants to have flexibility at work. Not everyone wants remote, and not everyone wants to go back full time, right, in the office. So being able to handle flexible work schedules, being able to accept that life is the priority in the office, right? That doesn't mean people don't value their job or value work, but life is the priority. That has absolutely smacked us all in the face, happily on some level. And now the progressive companies that are adjusting to that, chaotic change, or the change that comes from that chaos, are the ones winning. So, and the leaders that embrace that change are the ones getting hired faster, because you still got to make a profit. The business still needs to run, but you got to make sure you keep the people that you've spent the time and effort in hiring and training. So, and that's just one small part of how to be flexible and how to embrace the chaos that we're all in and make changes of it. So that is my observation. And, when you're going on your next executive interview, I would prepare for that. Be prepared for the types of questions that, embrace scenarios you haven't dealt with before. And, it's more of a behavioral, interview, situational type of questioning, but put some thought into it. Really challenge yourself either with a partner or with an interview coach where you have scenarios played out, and how would you have answered if asked these types of questions about scenarios that you hadn't done before. Do you have evidence in your background that shows where you haven't dealt with a particular situation before and you did make something out of nothing, right? So that's the stories that you need to bring to the table, I think, when you're going for that senior leadership, C-level type of interview. And that is one way the executive interview has shifted more prolifically, where that is being asked now across the board, where that used to not be only asked really at like either senior level roles or industries that had a lot of volatility in it. And I think now, if it's a stable industry, it's being asked. So it's just, again, my insight, my observations, and I wanted to share that with you. If you would like to join my next executive interview mastermind, I'm going to be having it tomorrow. If you're watching this video after Thursday, the 17th, March 17th, then I'm going to just ask you to message me, and I can, give you our interview resources and options of how we can help. But if you're watching this before we do this at March 17th, feel free in the link below to apply. And this way we can have you join us and put forth your most troubling interview questions so we can answer it and hopefully alleviate your struggle. So again, Lisa Rangel, Chameleon Resumes, thank you so much for watching. If you think this will help someone, I'm going to ask you to share it. If you have a comment or a question, feel free to post it below in the comments. I read and reply to every comment, or email me at lr@chameleonresumes.com. I read and reply to every email as well. So I look forward to seeing you next week, and make it a great day.